Hello, everyone. This is Michael Wehar broadcasting here from Swarthmore College's WSRN 91.5 FM. If you haven't joined us for a while, you're always welcome to give us a call. Our phone number is 610-690-5700. And we're very excited today to have a special guest, Joshua Goodman. Joshua, we're really glad to have you. And we were wondering, could you please take a moment to quickly introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Joshua Goodman. I'm an alumni from the class of 1985 at Swarthmore. I am a practicing attorney and a theater producer.
Well, thank you very much for that introduction. And that's really amazing how you can combine both of those career paths. So we're excited to hear more about that. So the first question I had for you, though, how did you first get involved with theater? Were you involved with theater or any shows when you were at Swarthmore?
My parents were big theater fans, and so they took my brother and I to theater growing up, and that really is what started my passion for theater. I had nothing to do with theater at Swarthmore other than taking Shakespeare for non-majors, which wound up being actually pretty interesting, but I'm still not a Shakespeare fan.
Well, that's very interesting. I learned about Shakespeare in high school, and I never pursued theater in college. But then somehow you've had this really interesting and exciting career. So how did you end up becoming a theater producer?
Someone I knew kept trying to get me to invest in Broadway and invest in theater, and eventually I did when I had some money to do that. And I started seeing the business side of theater and finally started to understand what a producer was, because for all the many years that I went to theater and saw these people called producers, I never knew what it was. So the investing allowed me to start seeing that.
So that leads me to my next question. What is the role of a producer? I've read some things online, but I've never experienced it myself. I would love to hear about your take on it.
Sure. In theater, the producer is kind of the person in charge of the whole project. The producer will pick the project, will hire a director in conjunction with the writers if they're still around, and then get involved in the creative process, and then is in charge of the whole business side, which is the fundraising, the marketing, overseeing press. And so you wear a lot of hats when you're the producer.
So earlier on, it sounded like you got into the investing side, but then now it sounds like you took on a lot. Really, as a producer, you're someone else described this to me. I don't know if this is accurate, but you might be part of the heart of this show. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I would say that. And I guess by this show, you mean I'm developing a new musical called Borderline. And I was looking for a new musical to develop. And I had agents send me quite a number of projects. And this was the only one that I connected with, both because of the story and because of the songs. The story is about a woman in her early 20s who is having difficulty finding her place in the world and having trouble connecting with her father, having trouble with finding a relationship. And as a result of a mandatory court-mandated therapy, she winds up being diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and has a reaction to that and slowly comes to terms with it and what that means for her, and then allows her to start moving on with her life. And one of the things I really liked about the story was that the writers really had a point of view. They were not, the main character is acerbic, is, in some ways not likable until you understand where she's coming from. And I think a lot of shows are afraid to take that kind of view. And so, it's somewhat daring for a show to do that. And, in looking as, we luckily have a production next April at Delaware Theater Company, and possibly another regional production soon after that. And of course, my target is to move it to Broadway, because as a commercial producer, I want to make money. And not every producer is a commercial producer. That's not what they're looking for. But I take the show and the message of the show very seriously, and I intend to use it as a way to promote mental health awareness and to help fight stigma associated with mental illness, including contributing part of the proceeds of the show to organizations that promote mental health awareness.
Well, I think that's really great that you're doing this, and just listening to you and how you described borderline, I can tell how meaningful it is to you, and I think that's really awesome. Me personally, I'm always a believer, and I want to support people who are passionate. So my students, whenever they have a passion, I want to be there for them to help. And I just hearing the passion in your voice is really, really awesome. And I did not know there was a difference, that there are commercial producers. So thank you for you educated me a bit there.
Sure.
So I want to actually play some music from your musical Borderline. So I'm going to play the first file I have here, and then afterwards you can tell us a little bit about that. Is that okay?
Sure. Yep.
Okay.
Hi! Oh my God!
Hi, friend. Yes.
Excuse me.
Shot of whiskey.
Can I get a beer, please?
Yeah.
I'd love a beer. I know I can't hear you either, but I was just wondering if you Hello? Can I get a beer and a shot of Jack?
You lose another job?
You try drawing leaves in the foam of a latte.
Hey, heads up. The guy at the end of the bar is checking you out.
Really? You think? How's my hair? Talk about the weather, lovely weather. Wonder whether it'll last. Unlike my cousin June, who passed away, but way too soon last week. In fact, I should have gone to visit her before she died. I really tried, but didn't have a ride down to Virginia. Virginia Woolf, I love her. She's my favorite, but she's also dead. She killed herself. The voices in her head just said to do it. I often think of suicide. Do you want to share the guacamole? I'm gonna die alone. I scare off every guy that comes my way. Always have a stupid thing to say. Like, is that really your hair or a toupee? I'm gonna die alone. Alone, alone, alone. I'd rather fake a coma than converse, 'cause everything I say comes out perverse. I might as well be living in a hearse, 'cause I'm gonna die alone. Hey, Jessica, how's the coffee shop without me?
Pretty good. The customers are actually getting what they want now, so.
Wow, that's a little harsh.
But true. Bye, Anna!
drink. Can't help despising any socializing. I mix Xanax with my Captain Crunch, and then again with lunch. I think I've got a hunch.
You're gonna die alone.
I was just about to say that.
Talking to yourself 3 whiskeys in.
Waiting for a life that won't begin. Someone cue the sad-ass violin.
Are you a dog or a cat person?
Puppies, I love puppies, they're so cuddly and soft. Oh, which reminds me of this one time back in college playing softball. I was catcher, and I loved to feel the glove around my hand. It was leather, and it made me think of Silence of the Lambs. You know the way he'd use the skin, and then he'd wear it. Kind of scary, but I think I've seen that movie 40 times. Not because I like it, I don't like it, I just... How did I get to this from puppies? What? That's it? You're leaving? You barely got to know me. Please sit! I'm sorry. I need someone to show me what to say. I ramble, I know it's unbecoming, but my thoughts are scrambled. This whole thing is mind-numbingly absurd. I'm doing worse with every word. No, wait, don't leave! I'm sick of failing.
Pretending you belong.
There must be something wrong with me. I keep on trying, but something's gotta give. Or what is there to live for? I need affection, or at least a connection. 'Cause what happens when I take a fall and no one cares to call? 'Cause no one cares at all. Then I'd really die alone. Like my mother died alone. Doesn't every person want the same?
Someone to invite
Who likes to say I love you, then my name? Tired of the chaos I create. I'm tired of regretting every day. I'm tired of the fear that my fate is sealed in stone. 'Cause I don't want. Don't wanna die alone.
So we just listened to the opening number, and it sounded great. Could you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, what the song does, it does several things. One is it sets the scene for the show. It identifies Anna, the protagonist, and her difficulty with dealing with people, really, and her attempts to engage in relationships. And of course, the other thing it introduces is a comedic element. So while the story certainly has a very serious message and storyline, the writers were very particular that they wanted to tell this by using comedy as well. And that's one of the things that made it attractive to me, because it becomes much more accessible. It's not, I mean, there is another show dealing with mental illness, a Broadway show, Next to Normal, which I love, but it purposely did not use humor. It has some humor, but borderline, we use humor to bring people in, to let them understand the story, but we never make fun of mental illness or her dealing with, or other people dealing with mental illness. She's not the only one in the show who has mental health issues. And I think the humor really allows people to approach it while also dealing with the more serious elements of it.
Well, I thought it sounded amazing. It was very enjoyable to listen to. And
I also want to give a shout out to the composer lyricist Benjamin Velez, who to me is really a genius and not only is the song melodic and tuneful, but the lyrics really are so well crafted, and that's true for really all the songs in the show.
So, in case you're just joining us, I just wanted to give a quick recap. Again, my name's Michael Wehar, broadcasting here from Swarthmore College's WSRN 91.5 FM. And we have a special guest, Joshua Goodman, and he's telling us about Borderline, which is a musical that he's a producer for. And we listened to the first song, and I'm actually going to play another song we have here called Borderline, I believe.
The title song.
Mm-hmm, the title song. So I'm going to start that in just a moment.
There's a girl I see in the mirror. I touch her face and my finger traces her eyes. There's a line between me and her. Sometimes that line's a blur and I don't know who I am, who I am, who I am. I wish it was clear. Am I there? Am I here? One of us is sick and one is fine. But where's the line? Where's the line? Where's the line? Ah, can you hear me screaming? Ah, are you in my head? Why am I always feeling stuck between sick and fine, stuck on the borderline? Ah, do you think I'm crazy? Ah, is it in my head? I don't need pills to make me feel like I'm fine when I'm stuck on the borderline. Cold sweat, bad dream, back from Wonderland. Fall down, fall up, they don't understand. One cut, just one, just to let it out slowly. Helpless, stop, you can fight it, just try it, just try. Sick and fine, stuck on the borderline. Am I neurotic, psychotic, or am I in between? Am I depressed or suicidal, or am I in between? Am I insane or just dramatic, or am I in between fake and real, in between think and feel, in between stop and go, yes and no, high and low? When I'm trapped on the I will not be crazy. No, it's in your head. I don't need pills to make me feel like I'm fine. Free from the borderline. Free from the borderline.
Well, again, the title song was really great. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Yeah, if you could tell us a little bit about the title song, that'd be great.
Sure. This comes right after Hannah learns that she has borderline personality disorder. It is also the end of the first act. And she's really struggling with the idea that she may have, that this is something she has to deal with for the rest of her life. And so she kind of is falling apart in the song. I guess this is a good time to say that the book writer Ariana Garber herself has borderline, and so not only did she inspire the story, but she's drawing on her own experience in writing the show. And so, we actually had someone, a psychiatrist who's an expert in the field, come see a workshop of the show, and he really thought that we captured someone with borderline very accurately.
Well, that's really interesting to hear, and I love how, as you said before, this musical combines, amazing music, comedy, in a respectful way, and but a serious issue or a serious thing that is meaningful to discuss and to capture this experience.
Yeah, I think it handles all of it very well. Obviously, the show is still in development. As we say for musicals, they're not done until they're in their last iteration, and the show has to be frozen, which means no more changes are allowed. So we'll be fine tuning and changing up until we open on Broadway. So, but that's part of the beauty of the process, because shows, you need to tell the story in the right way, not just this show, any show, but particularly this show, so that people coming from different backgrounds really can relate to it. And we know from some past exposure that people have to the show, people in high school and college really relate to the show because it's about connecting, it's about trying to find your place. And people my age or more mature adults connect with it on a whole different type of level, just because it's such an interesting and moving story and told in, a different kind of way.
Mm-hmm. Well, I am approaching 30, and I still am finding my place in some aspects of my life. So I'm excited to hopefully see this show at some point. But we have two other questions. One we kind of skipped over. I just wanted to come to. Could you tell us a little bit about some of your past shows that you've had, and maybe there's a couple of them you would like to tell us about?
Sure. Now, I guess I need to now say on Broadway there are two types of producers. One is the lead producer, which what I've been describing so far is I am the lead producer of Borderline. And then, because Broadway shows cost so much, there are other people called co-producers. And co-producers help raise money and may have some say in the show, but not a lot. And they usually get involved after the show is pretty well on its way. So I started out as a co-producer, and it allowed me to really see what a producer does, to understand the business, understand marketing, because as a lawyer, I never got involved with marketing. So, and you really see how important that is particularly as a commercial producer, but even, I'm dealing with Delaware Theater on our show, and, they're concerned with marketing. So it's an issue, and, dealing with how do you get the press involved in a show, and how do you tell, because you're telling your message not only through ads, but also through stories in the press so that people understand what the story is. And so the first show that I agreed to be a co-producer on is one that I really was a favorite of mine growing up, both before Swarthmore and after, and that is Pippin. And it was just exciting for me to be part of that process. And it's funny, even though Stephen Schwartz wrote it, I never met him till quite a number of years later. But, it just was very special. And then, of course, I was fortunate that the show won a Tony for Best Revival of a Musical. And that same year, I had also was a co-producer on a new play called Vanya and Sonia and Masha and Spike by Christopher Durang. And that also won the Tony for Best New Play. So here I started out and I thought, oh, this is so easy that, you're on a show and you win a Tony, you win 2 Tonys. It didn't quite turn out that way because my next show was Rocky. It was a musical based on the movie. And everyone seemed to think that it was going to make a lot of money. And so I got myself on the show and quite the opposite happened. And so, but as the saying goes, you learn more from failure than from success. And I certainly learned a lot from that. And I also learned a lot. I was the lead producer on and off. I was trying to revive a musical from the 90s called When Pigs Fly. And I learned the hard way that you actually need to raise a lot of money. And the way I went about it was too late in the process. So we were actually in rehearsals, but I couldn't raise enough capital to continue. So it never actually had a production. And while that was devastating in a lot of ways, I, also realized that I enjoyed being the lead producer, that I enjoyed being in charge of all these different elements. And that's why 6 months later, I started looking for a musical to develop.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. And that's, I think, amazing how you got to see that success at first, and you got to see a little bit of a failure in some respects as well, and learn from both of those experiences. And to me, it sounds like a very exciting journey, and I'm just so glad to have been able to have you on the show and share about it.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, I have one last question I was going to ask. Do you have any comments or advice for Swarthmore students? Maybe some of our listeners might want to get into theater or might want to pursue careers in theater. Any comments or advice for them?
Well, first of all, people should understand that theater is more than just acting. There are a lot of fields and experts that go into making a show, both creatively and on the business side. But, there are actors, there are also scenic designers, there are sound designers, there are costume designers, there are orchestrators, people who make the music, because it's usually just when a composer writes, it's for one instrument, but someone has to then make it work for an orchestra. And then there are people who help make sure the show runs. There's general managers, and they're the day-to-day business people who run the show. I don't know enough to do that, but my general manager does. So, that's why I use a general manager. Plus, they deal with a lot more issues than I want to deal with. And also marketing and press and of course, producing. Now, I'm happy to always serve as a resource for people interested in theater. So there, people are, students can feel free to reach out to me, either through, I know my email is in the Swarthmore Alumni Network, or through the Borderline website, which is borderlinemusical.com. We have a contact sheet, and that will come directly to me.
Well, I just want to say thank you again, and just for all those out there listening, this is Michael Wehar broadcasting from Swarthmore College's WSRN 91.5 FM, and we had an amazing guest, Joshua Goodman, and I hope your musical Borderline has a lot of success. Thank you again, and we're going to sign off for today.
Thank you, and thank you for having me.